Hello, welcome to another video about Reflexis Flow. This time around I'd like to show people how to install our platform. We don't have a one-click type of install. It's actually quite elaborate, and that's why I think it's good to show people how to get up and running. So it's more like a getting started this time around, and well, I hope it'll be useful. So first off, our software can be downloaded from our releases portal. If you log in, what you see is something like what we see right now. I can make this a bit larger, so hopefully this will make things easier to read. If you let's focus on the main release. If you click here, what you see is usually a brief description of what the release is all about. And in this case, there have been several patches, so you can see the patches that are that we published. The important bit, though, are the components that you see below, and well, you need all 6 of them, so there are half a dozen components to get a working environment, a working installation. Oftentimes we call an installation of Reflexis Flow an instance, and we set things up so that, you know, on a developer machine you basically have one instance, one working environment, but on a server machine you can have as many instances as you like, and they are physically separated, so you can evolve them separately. The components, though, are a collection, and you need to know about what's what to make things work. And if I click one like this, it'll give us a brief description, and if you click through, there's actually a link where you can download this particular component, and obviously the same holds true for the other components. So I click here, you can click this link, and it'll give you the component in this particular version, so this particular release. So if you do that for all these 6 components, what you actually end up with is this collection of files that you see here on top. So let's do it like this. And what I'd like to do is to show you from start to finish how to get things up and running, and also tell you a bit about what's what, so you have a good grasp of what we're dealing with. So the first thing to do is take this one here, the command line component. What you see here at the end is the version number, and what I've done as preparation for this video is simply download all the most recent components that are there. So some are so like these 2, well, these 3 are from the main release. This runtime component was part of the first patch that we published, and these 2 were published in the second patch. So these are essentially all the latest bits and pieces. Now, what I've done is I've sort of cleaned up my machine. So if I go here and I do something like this, I is the name of the command line interpreter. It's not recognized. So what we'll do is we'll start out by installing that. So since this is a zip file, I'll unzip it. There are 4 files. So these 3 files are, well, this is the actual executable. This is the so-called boot script. We'll get to that later on. And this is a what we call a package. So packages have the RFX extension, and packages are basically a collection of scripts, a collection of resources, or a collection of flow parts, and having them in one file obviously makes them a lot easier to manage. So what I'll do here is I'll select them. Go to a folder that's in my path, like this folder here, and paste them in here and see what happens. So if I now run I, there's actually some output. So and this helps you get things started, and you'll see why in a minute. Let's minimize this one. Take this away. So I is kind of like the command line version of the Indigo runtime. The runtime. There's actually only one runtime executable, but it comes in 3 different flavors. So a command line version, an interpreter version that's used for web deployment, and what we call a worker version that's used for running things in the background. And since we have the command line version up and running, we can actually use it, because part of the command line package are all kinds of utilities that help you manage your Flow instance or your Indigo instance. And the first thing we need to do now is create the instance. So and that's fortunately very easy to do, because we have a deploy utility, and like most of our utilities, you can simply run it. So it's I space deploy, and it'll give you a very brief description of how to run it. So in this case, well, let's see. So I have some folders here. I don't want to override any of the existing folders. I want to create a clean instance. So what I'll do is I'll say I deploy to a folder that's called Reflexis. So let's do it like this. And what it has done is create a Reflexis folder with an entire folder structure underneath it. So at this point, it's probably best if I go here and have a look here. So we go to the Reflexis folder. You see there are half a dozen folders created just by running deploy. And let's see if I check the folder sizes. You'll find we find that only the data folder has actually something in it. All the other folders are still left empty. So there's an application folder with a folder for starter logic, worker logic, all empty. There's a bin folder. We'll come to this in a minute. The data folder, a development folder. The development folder we use for storing utilities and other stuff. A library folder that holds some other empty folders, but the library folder is used to store library scripts. And a project folder that's obviously also empty. So if we now look at the data folder, we find that there's a whole bunch of support folders here, and for this video I won't go into any of the I won't actually go into what's what for all the different folders, but we'll just briefly look at the ones that are not empty here. If you go into the log folder, then we find that there are actually 3 databases. These are system databases for storing alerts, for catching access to missing stuff, and managing logins. And there's the FLW folder, the Flow folder, that holds some system folders as well. And we'll get to those in a minute. So we have created a Reflexis folder. So this becomes our working installation. As you can see, it's all pretty empty apart from some Flow and Indigo system databases, but there's no software at all. There are no executables, no scripts, no nothing, and that's because you need to install these yourself. So let's do that. So back to the components. So we've unpacked this. The next thing you need to do is, let's start with the executables. The executables are in here, the instance folder. I'll extract it. Let's do it like this. And have a look. Here's an executable with the name of our toolset. And there's a bin folder with more executables. So what you need to do is take all these executables and move these into your instance like this. So if I go here, let's remove these and keep things tidy. And well, there's an executable, but the executable needs logic to run. It needs scripts, and as I said earlier on, we package scripts. So what you need to do now is copy this runtime package to your instance and place it next to the executable. So I'll just do that. And now I need to rename it, excuse me, to Indigo. So there's an indigo.exe and an indigo.rfx. And now this Indigo interpreter actually will find all the software that's stored in here. And just to give you a quick glance of that, this is actually a package holding stuff. I'll double click it. This opens it up in SQLite SPY in this case. And what we find now is that this RFX file is actually a database. It's a database that's holding a part table. There are actually 158 parts, and there are 125 scripts. So that's a lot of logic. Now if we look at the downloads, there's also a modeling. There's a runtime package and there's a modeling package. It kind of depends on what you want to do with this instance. And in this case, it's not just a server instance, an instance to be used on the server to deploy your flows, your application. But it's also an instance on my machine. This is a developer machine, and on this developer machine I'd like to use the modeling environment. And we've kind of split the logic for modeling environments off from the regular runtime. So what we need to do now is add the logic from the modeling package to this runtime package. Unfortunately, there's a utility to do so, and it's called package update. So if I run package update, well, let's clean this up. You'll see that it takes a source package and a target package, and basically what happens, it takes all the stuff from the source package and checks if it's available in the target package, and if not, it'll copy things over. So let's take the modeling package from my download folder. I've downloaded all the components to the download folder, and merge it into this runtime package. And well, it'll give you a report. It says here updating scripts, and it actually copied 12 scripts over and 24 parts. Well, those are nice numbers, but purely by accident. And what we've done now is made a super package holding the regular runtime and the modeling support stuff. So next, we've set up a folder for the install. We've copied over the executables. We've copied over the packages and made sure that it's actually the super package, so you can use it for modeling. At this point, it's time to install all the web resources. And with web resources, I mean there's a little bit of JavaScript. There are some images, some small support files, some styling files, and well, you'll need to move these over to your web root. And yes, well, let's first move the stuff over, and to do so, we'll extract the htdocs zip like this, and I'll go to here you see I have a completely empty web root. So let's try it like this. I've configured the web server on this developer machine to point it to this root, and going to the root, it'll throw this error because there's nothing there. So let's put something in this root, and here's the stuff from our web resources zip archive, and I'll just move everything over. So here we are. Clean this up, and as we've cleaned up the web resources folder structure last year, it's fortunately it's fairly clean. So there's just one file in the root. If you go here, there's a couple of files here. These are actually the main files that you need. There are some modeling support files for the modelers. These are developer support files. Some external dependencies, and there are some files that you can use for login pages. Maybe I can go into these in a separate video. For now, they're really not that important. So let's move on to the next step. What we want to do is make sure that we can run stuff, that we can run our flows, and to make that happen, we need to associate this particular RFX extension with the interpreter that we've just installed. So with the Indigo interpreter here, to this one here. And so this particular step really depends on the web server that you're using. The web server that we are using is the Abyss web server by Aprilium. It's a really nice web server. We've been using it for ages. And it's a really nice web server. It performs well. It turned out to be really stable. The developer is very approachable and supporting it well. And last but not least, it's very easy to configure. So there's a really nice console that you can use very quickly, even if you're not really into this particular stuff. So let's look at the console. Like I said, we want to associate the RFX extension with one executable, the executable that you just saw on the root of our instance. And for Abyss, I logged into the server console. This is really easy to do. All you really have to do is go to scripting parameters, and here you can see that there already is one interpreter installed. This is the Fossil executable that we're using. Our team is using the Fossil repository to keep track of what we're doing. And to associate, so here we need to register the Indigo interpreter. All you need to do is say add, click browse, let's find our Reflexis folder. Here's the Indigo executable. So it needs to be registered as a CGI interpreter. There are no extra arguments. It's always good to check for file existence, and we need to register the extension. So I'll click here. I've done this before, so that's why it comes up here. Let's double check our interpreter, the extension. So this is good. So now there are two interpreters. Now I need to restart the console for Abyss to pick it up. So let's recap the story so far. I've downloaded the components from the portal. I've extracted the command line tool, so the command line version of the Indigo tool, placed it somewhere in my path, so Windows can find it. Using the command line tool, I used deploy to create the folder structure for the instance. We've copied over the executables. We've installed the packages. Now I've associated the RFX extension with the Indigo interpreter, so our web server knows about it. And well, we can sort of try if we can get anything to work. Before we do that, there is something that you need to set up as well, and that's let's first do this. So if I refresh this page, it'll still say there's nothing that you can do here, but if we go to flow sys local, it comes up with this page, and this So it says flow sys local.rfx, and it comes up with a page, which is good, but the page is empty. This is what we call the local menu, and what it shows is all the flows that you have installed in your Reflexis Flow instance, in the repository of the Reflexis Flow instance. And since we didn't install any flows, this menu is empty. So let's register a few flows and see what happens here. Right. The flows are in here. So what I'll do now is unzip these. If you're completely not familiar with Flow, Flow is basically the definition of a web application, and as part of the distribution, you get these 4 flows, and there's a flow to help you create flows, there's a flow to help you create databases, there's an administration flow that will help you register users and group them. And this one here is essentially a flow template. We can get to that later on. So what I'll do here is move them to the .flow folder of the instance that we created. Just move them here. And moving them here alone is not enough. So if I refresh this page, nothing happens because this page checks the flow repository. So we need to take the definitions and move them to the repository. And we can do that using the sync flow utility. So I'll go here. See these flow definition files, and I can use sync flow to take this definition and put it in the repository. So this is the flow modeler definition. TaskDB is the name of the repository. And now we've moved the flow modeler into the repository. Let's do the same with the data modeler. And if you start out, I don't think you even have to specify the repository name. If TaskDB is in the current folder, it'll find it. Yes. And last but not least, we should add the small flow template as well. So let's put this away, switch back here, press F5, and there you have them. 3 flows that we'd like to start, or at least like to check out. If I do that, it probably won't work. So I'll click it and nothing happens, and there's not even an error message or anything, and which we have done for security reasons. Just having a flow or a collection of flow in your repository doesn't mean that anyone can start them using a particular URL. So there are URLs under these links, and there's a mechanism to make sure that they're not started or accessible by accident. So if you want to start them from your machine, you need to make sure that there's a so-called local user registered on your machine. So if we go to the .flow folder, if I sort here by modified, you can see that TaskDB has actually been updated because we've imported the flow definitions into it. And if I go here, there's a task table. I won't explain all these bits and pieces. We can do that in a separate video if there's any demand. But these names look familiar, so that's good. But there are also there's also a user database and a session database, and if I open these, you see that there is no user. There's definitely no local user, but fortunately there's a quick way to register one. Set pass, which is actually short for set password, can be used to create a local user. And in this case, the password itself doesn't really matter. So let's specify a local team, and well, let's type the database as well. What has happened if we go here? It doesn't update the tree correctly, but no, funny. Yeah, it has created a local user with a hashed strange password, and since we've opened it, let's change the type of user to 1. So users can have different types with different kinds of privileges, and type 1 is actually the highest level privilege. So yes. So as you can see, the user database by default doesn't contain any users, and this is done by design. And just creating a local user actually uses a fairly low type with very few privileges, which unfortunately means that you need to open up the database and upgrade the local user, but there you have it. Maybe we should create a small utility to make this easier, so it's just a one-pass registration, but for now this is how it works. And if I go and click this link again, it starts. So that's a good thing. And basically the first thing it asks is, which flow would you like to model or create? So if you want to create a new flow, click here. If you just want to look at the definition of an existing flow, and there are 3 since we've just imported them, you can click here. And so here's the page template. If you click on steps, you can see that the data modeler has quite a few steps actually. This is not about the data modeler, but the red steps are user steps, the blue steps are server steps. We can have a quick look, like create class. It feels fairly slow, I'm not sure why. Let's look at the graph. Let's look at the menu. So what you see here from scratch, we've set up the Indigo instance, we set up the command line tool, we've registered a local user, imported a few flow definitions, and well, we're already up and running. So what's next? So the modeling environment is working. Maybe it's good to have another look at the command line tool, because the command line tool can be very handy. It's a nice thing to have, and also it's a good thing if you know a bit about where to put your own stuff. So if we go to the root of the instance, if I look at the folder sizes now, so the bin folder has a few executables. So there's the worker here. G layout stands for graph layout. This actually helps with the graphing bit that you've just saw. So this bit. Well, the dot folder here, the session folder now holds session files for the modeling session that we've just started. But what I'd like to show you is the dev folder. Dev util is the place where we put our utility scripts. Let's quickly create one to see if we can get it to work. So I'm opening it in my editor. Let's say, do it like this. Go back here. Oops, no, I don't want to do that. So I've created a utility called demo. If I now try to run it, like my demo, it complains that it cannot find the utility that I've just created. So I can go to the root, try again, nothing happens. So that's not good. I can make it work just by giving it the full path, like saying, oh, it's in dev util, and it'll say hello world. But that's not what we want. What you want, what I would prefer is to have this script. I'd like to be able to run the script wherever I am. So to make that happen, we need to go back to the place where we've put the command line tool, which was here. And if we now look at the stuff that we copied here, we actually put in these 3 files and this one here. Lua C is the Lua compiler, and you can use that to check your own Lua script for syntax errors. But what we want to do now is open this one. So this is the executable, the command line executable. This is its support package, and this is what we call its boot script. If I open it, it shows several settings that you can tweak if you have to. And in this case, the setting that you really want to tweak is the Indigo root. So you want to, since we've created an instance, we'd like to say, oh, we have created an instance and it's here. We call it Reflexis, I think. And just putting this path in the command line boot script. If I run it like this, it'll say, so without any arguments, it'll say, oh, I'm here, but my root is here. So if I run the demo script now, it works. So that's good. And all the other stuff still works as well. If I say sync flow or set pass or deploy, that works as well. But demo, which is a utility script that we've just created, is found too. So that's good. So the last bit that I'd like to show is where do you need to put your library scripts. So let's go back to the root of our Indigo or Reflexis Flow instance. Go to library, create a folder like ABC, doesn't matter right now. Let's create a small script like this, open it up. Well, this is not about showing you how to create library scripts, so I'll just do this very quickly. A good way to set up library script is to create a namespace, so a table that holds your functions or stuff, and then place your functions in this table. So let's do something silly and make a function that says so we've created a utility called demo. We've created a library script that we place in ABC, and it's called test. What I'd like to do is load this library script and run it. So a good way to do this is this. So you require ABC test. So you don't need to do it like this. So leave this off. And test will be the table that holds the library stuff. So we can quickly do it like this. Try and run it. So it says hello world, and it says, well, the test bit is a table, but in this table we've put a say hello function. So save it, run it, and there we are. So this is basically it. Let's go over it again one last time. Here are the 6 components. Usually you don't need to download them yourself if your team already has downloaded it and made them available. We started with the command line component to set up the command line, the Indigo command line tool. Using the command line tool, we created the folder structure. So the instance zip archive held the main executable, so the CGI interpreter executable and the worker executable, as well as the graphing helper executable. We've copied the runtime package over and renamed it Indigo RFX. Then we added the modeling scripts using package update. We took the flows, the flow modeler flow, the data modeler flow, the administrator flow, and the flow and a flow template, and we've imported them here. We've put them here, and using sync flow, put them in the repository in the task database. Last step, well, almost last step, was taking the web resources, put them here, and made sure that the web server knows that whenever it encounters the RFX extension, it runs the Indigo interpreter. So once you've done that, the last bit, it's a tricky bit, is we've used setpass is here to create a local user. And once you've done that, you can use the local menu to start flows. And but you cannot only start flows, so run web applications, but you can also run Lua scripts, either utilities, library scripts, etc., etc. And that sort of concludes a quick trip through the installation process. Why did we make it so difficult? Well, we don't really think it's that difficult, but a good reason for us to do it like this was we really dislike one-click installs, like if you click something and magic happens in the background, nobody knows what happens. And this approach is fairly really low level, but it also forces you to understand the various bits and pieces, to know about the fact that there's only really one Indigo executable. It comes in 3 different flavors: the CGI interpreter, the worker, and the command line tool. It kind of forces you to know about packages and to realize that you can merge packages. I'll actually go into creating your own package in a separate video. There's also some documentation about that, but perhaps I'll do a new video. So it forces people to realize what the different components are and how to work with them. And a final reason for us is that it makes updates much easier. If there's, if there are new executables with, I don't know, an updated SQLite engine, we only need to release that particular component, come up with, update the components that holds the executables. And if there are fixes in parts or scripts, we only need to update the packages. And because you already know about packages, you know about how you can merge these updated versions into your own packages using package update. So on the one hand, not having a magic, also registering the Indigo stuff, the Indigo CGI interpreter with a web server is something that cannot be done using a one-click install. Every web server is different, so that's something that people need to do anyhow. Well, yeah, that's about it, I think. So I hope you found it useful, and I also hope I didn't forget anything. Let's have a quick look. No, I don't think I did. Oh, yes. There's one final thing that you may find useful. I already showed you that there's that command line tool. Oh, it's still open in the editor. The command line tool has a boot script. And if you look at the regular web interpreter for the web stuff, it does not have a boot script. But what you can do is copy this one over, rename it to indigo.ru, and then edit it. So you need to, let's see, you basically need to remove these 2 lines. So do it like this. And what's good about this is that some of these settings are really useful, but I'll explain these settings in a separate video as well. But if don't use a boot script like this for your server deploys, so don't, especially not the in-house one or the SQL profiling ones. So basically, don't use a boot script like this for server deploys, but for developer instances, so instances on your own development machine, these can be really useful, and I'll go into those in a separate video. So I think that wraps this up. I hope you found this useful. If there are any questions, suggestions, whatever, please post them on our mailing list, and we can deal with them there, or we can create new videos, whatever is most convenient. So Well, it's late, so I'm calling it a night. Thank you for watching, and until the next video. Bye bye.